Oi, oi, alright, how's it going? I'm Grant, you're you. This is Doodle Review coming through with a new album to give a spin, chat some fruff, and assign a score to. Why? Still trying to figure that out myself, but I'm compelled to do it nonetheless. Today we're talking about the latest album from Pearl Jam, Dark Matter. Dark Matter is the 12th Pearl Jam album. It comes 4 years after their last one, Gigaton. But compared to that one, it seems to be getting kind of marketed more as a bit of a comeback for the 90s legends, despite the wait not actually being as long as what we had for Gigaton. Rock producer and self-confessed PJ megafan Andrew Watt is behind the desk, adding to that whole narrative of him being the guy that breathes life into legacy rock acts. Full disclosure up front, I'm not a big Pearl Jam guy. In fact, this is my first time going cover to cover on a full Pearl Jam record. I mostly know them for the rock bar jukebox hits like Even Flow, Jeremy, and I actually got turned onto that track Animal through its placement on the show The Bear, which is a bit of a jam. Do you actually know what is a weird memory that takes up a lot of space in my brain that I think about a lot? Is first time I ever heard the name Pearl Jam was back before music was even a thing for me, and they got randomly name dropped in an episode of the New Adventures of Superman. I think like Jimmy Olsen had tickets for them or something, and I was like, oh man, that's a dumb name, surely that was just made up for Superman. And anyway, here we are. Dean Cain, underrated Superman, by the way. Anyway, a few years later, there was a whole period where I got quite into the whole like Seattle 90s sound, really digging bands like Screaming Trees, Soundgarden, Mudhoney, and obviously Nirvana. But for some reason, within that kind of little window of time, Pearl Jam just never inspired me to go deep on them. My next genre deep dive was like hardcore. So at that point, they were completely at odds with what I was looking for. And so they've remained a blank spot ever since. I'll be up front, Dark Matter isn't really to my personal taste, and that will be reflected in the rating. But, my interpretation of what a good album review is that it is a blend of some of that personal taste, but with some, objective assessment of songwriting, performances and production, with a touch of then like the contextual understanding of the wider rock canon and where the album sits within that. I obviously don't have a huge knowledge of the context of all of Pearl Jam's discography, so it will be interesting to learn in the future as I kind of go back through their albums, which I'm sure I will at some point, whether my lack of enthusiasm for this project is due to a feeling toward the band in general or just this particular album. In general, it's just the slower, plodding mid-tempo stuff, of which it feels like we actually have more than we actually do on this record, because the tracks, those in particular, they just go on and on and on and on and on. Upper Hand literally starts with a full 2-minute build-up that is tense and foreboding and really lays it on thick with the atmosphere, and then just leads to what is, a very slow verse that kind of just starts a completely different track. I don't really hear the reference back to that whole intro we spent so much time on as well, which kind of renders it pretty useless. This segues into Waiting for Stevie, which I actually don't mind the main riff of. It has that kind of psychedelic organ effect on the guitar, which reminds me of Screaming Trees. It's just the band don't really then do anything with that. Vedder, whose voice tonally is pretty exceptional throughout the album, but here his melody is just kind of following that main riff without a lot of range, and it's just fatiguing over the course of this long track, with this one having a totally unnecessary outro. And it's not that I exclusively have something against slow or mellow tunes. I actually don't mind something special. Lyrically, it's a celebration of a child from the perspective of a parent, with a nice kind of sentiment imparting some life lessons, which I think is sweet. And what it gets right compared to the others is just like this sense of urgency. It gets the point across without any unnecessary sections, and Vedder here plays around with the cadence and the phrasing of his delivery to make the somewhat predictable words quite engaging. What I am a fan of throughout this album, even on the songs I'm not into, is the production. I've spoken before on this channel about my fondness for Andrew Watt's production. I really like the work he's done with Ozzy. I thought he did a great job on the most recent Stones record, and once again he's nailed it here. Compared to the Stones record, you can tell Pearl Jam had absolutely no interest in trying like make their music fit into a modern sound. There's minimal post-production on Vedder's voice, and there's a fair bit more dynamic range here, which I think again proves what I said in that review of the Stones, that while Watt brings his own thing to the table, he is also in service to the band. The Stones clearly wanted a sound that would be able to sit back to back with more digitally produced tracks, and Pearl Jam obviously just wanted something grounded, earthy and timeless. The thing Watt brings to the table is a clear and wholehearted enthusiasm for the music and the band he's working with, which I think you can tell really brings out the best in the artist. There are a couple of moments, I think on Upper Hand, maybe Waiting for Stevie, possibly both, where at the end Matt Cameron really starts pushing on the drums, even kicking the tempo up a couple of notches. And this to me just really indicates the band being in an environment where they are actually just having a great time, and that is fun to hear, even if, like me, you aren't necessarily fussed on the music itself. I also really appreciate that they avoid any temptation to overproduce anything. A couple of months back I reviewed the latest Black Crowes album, and one of the things I noticed with that is that they do the whole late stage rock band thing of like just throwing the whole kitchen sink in on the production, you know, choirs, organs, extra percussion, more piano. Here, either under the guidance of Watt or just their own restraint, Pearl Jam pull back from doing this, and in a couple of instances where they really could, you know, go wild. Like Wreckage has a lot of space, for instance, where they could go over the top of the relatively simple progression, and thankfully they hold back. Despite being a bit of a bummer on this review, there are some tracks I actually enjoy. Opening track Scared of Fear is really catchy, and I don't think you can deny it. The opening guitar riff actually threw me for a bit of a loop because it sounds so light, single coil and upbeat, almost Strokesy. But what is cool is how the chorus is actually the opposite, quite gritty and dark, and it's an interesting contrast that works really well. React Respond is another favourite with really high energy. The riff is simple but it works, and I like the very occasional uses of a bit of extra production, like the plucked guitars with all the delay in the pre-chorus. The climax of the chorus going into the instrumental part is another point where the band sounds super energized and it's just fun to listen to. The title track also has some of the best Vedder vocals on the album, and I like what they do again here with a real simple riff. So yeah, those are my thoughts. It hasn't made me a Pearl Jam fan. There's too much kind of mid-tempo, boring post-grunge Americana going on, but the fast ones are decent and the whole thing is brilliantly performed and perfectly produced. I'm going to give this one a 5.8 and knock it on the head. But what are the Pearl Jam fans saying though? If you aren't completely pissed off at me for this review, let me know. What am I missing? How do you rank this in the band's canon? As a complete novice, I'm interested to hear. Other than that, check out some other reviews linked in the description below. I'll link my Stones review and the Black Crowes review, as well as a few others that you can check out. And yeah, subscribe, share some thoughts, show some love, or just hurl some abuse in the comments. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, mate.